to the Massachusetts General Hospital Frontal Temporal Disorders Unit Community Forum Friday. Today's session is Setting Up for Success, Managing Challenging Behaviors at Home. My name is Katie Brandt. I'm the Director of Caregiver Support Services and Public Relations for the MGH FTD unit, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Amy Marchesano. Amy is a licensed mental health clinician who began as a caregiver support specialist in the MGH FTD unit in March of 2020. She started during the pandemic, one of our newest members. Amy's experience includes 15 years working with families at every stage of life's trajectory in both medical and community-based environments, providing clinical services and family advocacy. Her interest in caregiver research is focused on measuring caregiver burden and stress and its effect on families within the FTD community. Amy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. I'm so excited to be here with you having this conversation.
You know, I think that this is such an important topic, and I'm proud that our caregiver support services arm is going to be addressing it today, because we know that we get a lot of questions from families around this topic.
Right. There's a lot of stress sometimes that the caregivers are experiencing when dealing with challenging behaviors day in and day out. And especially as we go through this pandemic, stress is at an all-time high. So I'm excited to be able to talk about strategies that could help caregivers in this time.
We're definitely going to do that. So let's go to the next slide and dive right in.
Sure. So when we're talking about care planning and working with people that have dementia, people living with a diagnosis, we always want to remember and put in the forefront of our mind dignity and remaining respectful, acknowledging their personhood, listening to what they would want, what are their goals, and integrating their caregiver or family as a central part of the team. We use the acronym PLWD. You'll hear me refer to it, or you'll see it in the slides. That's person living with dementia. We want to acknowledge their goals, their values, their strengths. What do they want? What is their goal? And that's really important. Mm-hmm.
What a great framework to start our discussion today, because what we're going to talk about, this topic of a behavioral approach, is central and can be central to a person-centered care plan. So I love that.
So do you want to go on to the next slide?
Yeah.
So when we talk about person-centered care planning, there are three approaches that could be used to behavioral issues or behaviors. And the first one I want to start out with is the medical approach. As you see there, this is critical because we want to rule out that there could be any medical reason for someone's behavior. Now, as you know, behavior is a symptom of the disease. It's not intentional, and it's something that they're experiencing as a way of communicating to us often, because they might not be able to use words, or if they can use words, they might not be able to explain exactly what they're feeling. So if somebody is having pain, we want to rule out that there's no medical explanation for that pain. And we also want to make sure that they don't have such as a urinary tract infection, or pneumonia, or maybe something else that could be brewing. So you always want to check first with your medical team and your doctor before launching into anything to address the behaviors in a different way. So that's the first one. The second one is environmental, and that includes anything around the person in their physical environment, but it could also include scheduling. It includes what is around them, supporting them. So for example, if they're in their home, is there clutter? Is their dog barking, a neighbor's dog constantly, or construction that could be grating on them, making them irritable? Different examples. And this is also something that could be happening at the day center or their assisted living. What we're going to talk about today isn't just for the home. So I want to say the environment is anything around them. And last but not least, behavioral, which is what we're going to focus on today. So what is our approach to someone's behavior that they're exhibiting? And what is our response to what they're doing? So are we calm? Are we, thinking of it in a patient way? Or are we rushed to get somewhere and, maybe they're speaking slowly and we're trying to get them to hurry up? So we really need to think about our approach and our response to what the behavior is. And that's the behavioral approach that we're going to talk about today.
Amy, I love how you've outlined these three tenets of a person-centered care plan, and how today we're going to really shine the spotlight on the behavioral approach as an important aspect of person-centered care. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay, so let's talk about what the behaviors might actually be. Challenging behaviors, as you see here, may include wandering, pacing, or exiting an environment. So are they going to the door? We all know pacing back and forth. They could be feeling anxious, okay? Also, resisting personal care. So that would be showering, brushing teeth, anything, ADLs, as we say, of activities of daily living. So anything of personal care. Are they resistant? They don't want to get in the shower, and also aggression, agitation, or anxiety, which could include yelling, hitting even, becoming very upset and having an outburst. So that's one of the other areas of behavior.
Yeah, and I think that really thinking about challenging behaviors are unique to the individual and unique to the family. And if you feel that a challenging behavior, a new symptom is difficult, then it is, and it is worthy of this attention and approach to managing it and making it better.
Right, and that could be different for every family. One of the examples we've talked about before is, let's say someone, can't necessarily always participate in a custom or religious ceremony that they typically did every year. That might be challenging for one family where another family might not have that same issue. So if it's challenging to you, it's definitely worthy of exploring. Not everybody's going to fit the mold the same way.
Right. Wonderful. So, a model for behavior management. There are multiple models when we're thinking about a behavioral approach to addressing challenging behaviors. And there's one specific model that we are going to review today, and it's called the DICE approach. This was developed with expertise and compassionate care by Dr. Helen Kales, Dr. Laura Gitlin, and Dr. Konstantin Lakatos. And the idea is that it's a framework for a behavioral approach to care that we think is easily digestible and something that both family and professional caregivers can implement both at home or in a memory care or skilled nursing facility setting. For the purposes of our discussion today, we're going to focus on how DICE can be applied when you're caring for a loved one at home. But I just want to be clear that this could work in multiple care settings. So the first thing I want to address is a phrase that's at the heart of behavior management, and that is non-pharmacologic treatment. So when Amy was going over the multiple tenets, the three aspects of a care plan, that medical, environmental, and behavioral approach, when you think about medical, that's the prescription part, right? That you call your loved one's physician and you say, oh, this new symptom has cropped up. And maybe the old way would be to just write a prescription to try to cope with that. What the DICE model does is it presents you with a toolkit that's non-pharmacological. So it's behavior-based. And as Amy said, it focuses on your approach to the challenge, and it also focuses on your response to the challenge. And the goals of non-pharmacologic treatment are to prevent the challenging behavior, the symptom, to provide symptom relief. So if someone has high aggression or anxiety, we want to provide them with relief for that. That can promote a higher quality of life and a higher quality of care for both the person living with dementia and the care partner. And we want to have a reduction of caregiver distress. What we know is that when caregivers are doing well, their loved ones do well. And that really it's critical to address care for both members of the patient and care partner dyad. We want to help caregiver. Oh, go ahead, Amy. Go
No, I
ahead.
was going to say thank you. That was so lovely, so nicely put. You know, with the non-pharmacologic treatment, you wouldn't go to a doctor and say, I have shortness of breath, and they immediately write you prescription. I think Dr. Kales talks about that. And, you know, I thought of it and I thought, yeah, you're right. You know, you would want to know a little bit more about what's going on. And so I just thought I would add that piece.
Absolutely. And I think what you just said perfectly aligns with this idea of helping caregivers give context to behaviors to better understand why they occur. Or, as Amy pointed out, what if the behavior is not only a symptom, but what if it's a form of communication? And so this whole program is about helping you become a really strong detective so that you are the expert in your loved one, not only in them as a person, but you become an expert in how their disease is specifically affecting them. And lastly, we'll use a DICE approach to give you guys real tools, a strategy to approach these challenging behaviors so that you're not left feeling helpless. All right, next slide. So why use DICE? Well, we're passionate about it, but really it's because a non-pharmacological approach to care is an essential care plan element. So when you think about those three elements, the medical, the environmental, and the behavioral approach, you need all three. Anytime your loved one is experiencing a new symptom, you wouldn't want to only apply a new prescription without looking at context. You wouldn't want to apply a behavioral approach without talking to the medical provider. So really thinking that this is as critical an approach to care as the other elements. And then I think what's really nice about DICE is that it builds skills so that you can be flexible and apply it at every stage of your loved one's illness. And that's something that we all need, right, Amy?
I think that's important because the stages, as you go on your journey, you'll see that they do change. They're constantly changing. Some caregivers will say something like, once you get used to something being one way, a new behavior crops up. So this is nice because it's flexible and you could use it at every stage and just modify as you go.
Right. So let's go to the next slide. And Amy, maybe you can help us break down, why are we using this word DICE?
Sure. So DICE is an acronym that stands for DICE. D, describe, investigate, create, and evaluate. So with describe, we want to know what is the behavior. And maybe not just, well, they're irritable. We really want to break it down, explain, even get a piece of paper and write down everything about the behavior. Who was it? What happened? What was the interaction? What did they say? Where did it happen? Did they yell out, get away from me, it hurts, or something of that nature? What was happening when that occurred? Were they in the kitchen? Did they spill something? Just really breaking it down. The I for investigate pretty much, gives us a closer look at what was happening. What was the context? Did somebody scream and scare, was their child in the home and they screamed and it scared your loved one? They knocked something over and it was a spiral effect. We want to take a closer look and find out what was going on when this behavior occurred. Was there a trigger? Maybe there wasn't a trigger. Maybe this happens, around 5 o'clock every day. when you're preparing dinner. So we really want to investigate and become our own detectives, is finding out what could have been going on. Let's take a deeper, closer look. The C for create. General and targeted strategies. So we want to create a plan. We want to go forward with some ideas of what we might think was going on and what we might be able to implement that could help. And we'll talk about more nitty gritty later, but could we change the schedule or the routine, or could we do something differently, create a plan around with others, other family members, or health aid. So that's create. And evaluate is the last. E for evaluate is basically judging, how did it go? Did it go well? Is there something we could change? I just want to mention that it doesn't always work the first time, and sometimes it might not work at all. But I really think we have to try, because even if you got one or two things from what you tried, you're in a better position than when you started, and you can at least say, I've tried this before moving on to some other aspect of a plan. So I think that we want to kind of go through this, and we're going to show you some examples and talk about it further.
I really love this breakdown, Amy, and I think about one of the families that I worked with to teach them the DICE model. They had multiple siblings who lived in different states, and they talked to me about how they started a group chat about DICE. And anytime their loved one had a new symptom, they would say, let's go back to DICE, and they would hash it out over the group chat. And they said that it really sparked great insight, different perspectives, and like good team problem solving. And they felt like united, and that they had a plan, and it helped them as care team members, family members, to communicate more effectively with one another.
I was just going to say, enhancing the communication is key, right? Because you don't want to assume either. You don't want to assume that something's going on unless you really break it down and say, oh, wait, I didn't think of that. And if it happens again, if the behavior comes up in a different way, you have this framework that you can go back to. So
I love that. All right. So
do it, right, Katie? Anybody can do this. I mean, we break it down so simply.
we break it down so simply. So what we wanted to do is present a hypothetical behavioral challenge that we think is something that is pretty common. And we want you to think of this as an example, but that the DICE framework could be applied to any challenging symptom that you're dealing with. So let me share the case example with you again that Amy and I made up as a hypothetical situation. Maria is a 62-year-old woman living with a diagnosis of behavioral variant frontotemporal dementia. She lives at home with her husband and caregiver, Joe. Due to COVID-19, Maria had to stop attending her adult day health program, and she no longer attends her memory cafe in person with Joe. They used to go together. They do, however, have a home health aide 3 mornings a week to help with household activities, right? So there's the setting, right? We're talking about the environment. Now, here's more of the environment. Joe works full-time at home and attends a support online caregiver group whenever he can, 1 to 2 times a month. And within the last 2 weeks, Maria has shown increased resistance to bathing. This has created safety and health concerns, conflict between Joe and Maria, and increased caregiver stress and worry. So when you look at sort of the impact of this change in Maria's ability to cope with a typical activity of daily living, we're seeing a significant impact to the family that we want to address. So why don't we go to the next slide, and Amy, maybe you could walk us through how would we start to think about approaching a symptom like this?
Right. So, we're going to use the first step of describe. What is the behavior? So who is affected? So it's Joe and Maria. Maria is the person living with dementia, and Joe is her caregiver, her husband. They live in the same home. And when? Well, this is happening every morning before breakfast. So there's a pattern that has been identified. Where is it happening? It's happening at home. And what is it? So very basic, Maria refuses to step into the shower. She becomes highly agitated and yells at Joe. She's not getting the personal care she needs. So I just want to draw your attention to the little gears of the wheel there. There's three key factors to consider when we're talking about this. The caregiver, Joe. The caregiver is Joe. The person living with dementia is Maria. And the environmental. So the environment around them. They're at home. It's happening, in the morning. So we want to remember those three keys.
What I love about this, right away, you can see, Amy, that this is simple, right? So we know that caregivers are very busy. They're often overwhelmed and have a lot on their plate, and they don't have time to learn an in-depth, complicated, new training approach to care for their loved one. So what we want to do is present DICE in a way that, while it is built on a foundation of complex and thoroughly researched frameworks for understanding the symptoms of dementia, this DICE approach is meant to be applied in a way that is user-friendly. So you can see this first step, it's just about, putting down on paper what is happening. So I really love that. So why don't we go to the next step?
All right. So we're going to investigate. So here's where it gets a little more, interesting. How is Maria feeling? So is she hungry? It's before, I think we talked about it's breakfast time, right? So is she hungry? Is she even awake yet? Is she groggy? Is she kind of still waking up? Is she cold? Perhaps she's someone that always has a bathrobe on. I'm one of those people. I'm always bundled up. So maybe she's feeling cold. These are just examples. What makes Maria comfortable? Does she enjoy a certain type of music? Maybe she likes classical music over something else. Does she have a favorite soap that she uses when she bathes? And what is the temperature of the water? Some people, like myself, I like a nice, hot, steamy shower. I don't want the bathroom to be freezing cold when I get in there, So let's think about Maria in those ways. What is she feeling? She's the person living with dementia. What is her take on why she could be having behaviors, And then we want to look at how Joe is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So, is he rushing to get to work? I know a lot of us have to do both. We have to work and we also have to be caregivers. And, is he rushing to work potentially? Is he feeling overwhelmed? This is the fifth morning that in a row that he's worried she's going to, get combative, or he's concerned she could slip because she's having a hard time in resisting him. So is he overwhelmed in general? Is he not feeling well? Maybe he has a cold, and it's not like you really want to be fighting with someone about getting in the shower when you're not feeling 100% yourself. And what is his body language? I just want to mention something that we sometimes forget is that when you're communicating with people, it's over 50% of what you're saying is really in your body language. So, that's a fact that's been proven. So, your tone of voice, are you standing with your hands on your hips, kind of tilting your head? And these are things we might do subconsciously, not in an attempt to belittle anyone, but maybe it's just that, you actually have your hands in front of your chest because folded, just because you're kind of waiting and it's a little, they might be slow to get in the shower. Joe might be a little bored in the moment, like, let's kind of get going here. So, we want to talk about that. What is his body language? And is this different from the pre-COVID-19 routine? So all of us have been disrupted by the pandemic, and our loved ones are feeling it just as much or more than we are. They went to their memory cafe, they went to their friend's home, possibly took a walk with friends, did something special in the mornings. She was going to an adult day, which she isn't anymore. And that's a loss that we need to respect that. So she loved that day program. Maria loved it, and she's not attending it anymore. So there's some emotions that are going along with that. You know, where is she taking the shower to go to? You know, is she just taking a shower to take a shower? And she's like, well, I'm not going anywhere, you know, I'm not, and she's probably feeling somewhat of a loss in some capacity.
What I like about this slide, Amy, and how you've set it up is if you look at each of those three bullets, they correspond with the key factors. So first you're thinking about, let's investigate and ask questions about the person living with dementia. Let's ask questions about the caregiver, and let's ask questions about the environment. And remember, environment is physical space, it's context, like pandemic, it's schedule and routine. And one thing that I really like about the DICE approach in the investigate stage is that it gives the opportunity to investigate positive things and strengths. So if you look at that second bullet, you know, what makes Maria comfortable? This is an opportunity to think about, like, what does your loved one like? So what if Maria's favorite music was country music? And in the morning, as part of her shower routine, country music was playing in the bathroom. It might even make her feel more inclined to get into the bathroom. Or like you said, like, why is she showering? What's her reward for taking care of herself and getting beautiful? What will happen after that? And, you know, maybe it's using a favorite soap, or, oh, hey, honey, I've got your loofah already right here, and the shower's all warm for you. I think it's really thinking about what are those positive things, the strengths that we can draw upon to try to come up with the next step.
Right.
So why don't we go to the next slide? Amy, was there something else you wanted
Oh,
to
no, I
add?
was just going to say, you know, I've even used that in the past when I was caregiving. It came to me when we were talking. A fluffy robe was something that my mom really enjoyed. So thinking about when they get out of the shower, like the nice nice towel or something, like a smell that they enjoy, like a bath bomb or something like that. So
Yeah.
so we're going to talk about create. This is the fun part. This is the part where we get to make the plan that we're going to see if it works. We want to create a strength-based plan, as you were talking about, Katie. We really want to draw upon the positives that we can, and what can we implement, what can we change to make things go smoothly, more smooth. So before we do anything, I just want to emphasize we have to have a medical, you know, Joe decided that he was going to have a medical evaluation, and he called Maria's provider. And that's because, like we said before, you always want to make sure there's nothing brewing, nothing going on, no pain, nothing that could be addressed medically or needs to be addressed, no medications that could be causing an effect. So we want to investigate that first. So as part of our plan, you know, Joe decided that he was going to call Maria's doctor. And they talked about it on the phone and went through and found out, okay, we're okay to proceed. Green light, you know, you can use more of a behavioral kind of intervention in this case. So they decided, you know, a schedule adjustment. So Maria has breakfast and her medications first before showering. So before she would get up, she was still kind of sleepy, you know, this and that, hadn't had her medication yet. So Joe decided, well, what if we tried the medication first? Maybe it'll start kicking in, you know, and if that's what is necessary, you know, before showering, she gets that out of the way and maybe feels a little stronger after eating something, a little more awake to get into the shower. So let's try a schedule. Let's see, you know, adjustment. Let's see if that could have some effect on, you know, her resistance. And then the next thing is, you know, adding support. So Joe had a home health aide and decided to see, they had a great relationship. You know, Maria had a great relationship with the home health aide. They really enjoyed each other. You know, the home health aide had done her hair in the past, and maybe they, you know, went and got their nails done before. And so she knew her on that intimate level where maybe she would feel comfortable having her bathe her instead of her husband. So, you know, he's going to ask the home health aide, would you want to try bathing her? And let's do that change and see if maybe she would be a little more receptive to that.
I love that idea, Amy, because it draws directly on an identified strength, which is the positive relationship that Maria has with an existing care provider. And so that's a super example of just thinking about what's something positive that we can build upon.
Right. And the home health aide will also, take Maria somewhere. So before she was going to the day center, right? And now she's not going anywhere. But with COVID, maybe they can go to an outdoor area together, so which is even safer. So, maybe they could go to a garden, someplace that's not as populated, or go for a walk, even just around the neighborhood, or just taking the shower and saying, we're going to go here today. That might be, or just every now and then, seeing if that will spur her into being more interested potentially in getting kind of dolled up or getting in the shower.
And I think during COVID, we were thinking even the example of attending a virtual meetup or memory cafe to see if that might spark interest, because it was an event that Maria used to enjoy.
Right. So that's a great idea too. It doesn't have to even be leaving the home. It could just be trying to reconnect, basically. You're trying to connect, and she'll kind of be presentable if she showered, kind of buy into that.
Right.
And so the next step would be some self-care for Joe. Now, we all know that caregivers are being told you have to take care of yourself, and that's really hard to do when you have not a lot of time on your hands and when you're feeling stressed, but it is really, really important. So for this action, Joe utilizes the home health aide for respite rather than only to get work done. So instead of going in his office and doing his work when she comes, he's going to take, for example, a short 20-minute walk, or maybe go to the store, even if it's just for half an hour, to get a change of scenery, to see someone else, or, to get, a coffee, just trying to refresh himself. And also attending another support group. So he had gone 1 to 2 times a week. Let's say, he adds one more contact there, one more group.
Online, probably.
Online, virtually, right. I'm sorry.
No, I think we're adding that now. And, I think for caregivers, they're all being flexible during pandemic.
Right. So there are groups, still happening online. So I just want to reiterate that. A lot of people forget that you can find them. They are out there. So, right.
So the idea with DICE is, as you're working through the stages, so you've described the challenge, you've investigated and hopefully identified some strengths to build upon, and then now you've created a plan. So now it's the step where you would implement this plan. You'd implement the action items that you've identified you hope might make a difference in the behavioral challenge. And then next slide shows the last but very critically important stage, which is
evaluate. Thank you. So we're going to evaluate, how did it work? Now, as we spoke about before, sometimes it doesn't always work the first time, but when it does, it could be really beautiful and wonderful and a game changer. It could just be one small thing that we tweaked, and all of a sudden things are going a lot more smoothly, and you think, why didn't I think of that? So we're going to add support. The first step is, Maria was very receptive to having the home health aide help her with showering. So they switched that around. And she didn't show much of an interest going to the memory cafe online, which is understandable, because a lot of times, people living with dementia have a hard time focusing on the screen. Maybe it's just not the same. So that's okay. We tried it, didn't work. But the one thing was really great, that the home health aide was available and able to help her with showering, and that she responded to that. So that's a good thing. The next is a schedule adjustment. So Maria was somewhat resistant in the morning when showering with Joe's help, right? So maybe it was the fact that we could change the person. Maybe it could be that the home health aide is doing the showering rather than Joe. So if he's finding it to be difficult when he showers her, then maybe he could switch it around and try to do it in the evening. You know what I mean? Or also, maybe they even skip a day until the home health aide arrives the next morning. I mean, as long as there's no safety or health concern, I mean, obviously, if she's wearing Depends, that, you want to be clean and don't want to put that off. You want to make sure the person's comfortable. But in this case, if Maria's comfortable and clean and it's just going to be waiting until the morning, maybe Joe could kind of switch some things around or try it in the evening. Try a different time, a schedule adjustment.
I really like that idea of being flexible, and maybe what always worked before isn't the thing that you're going to keep doing. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Right. Maybe Maria typically always showered in the evenings before, and just got up from in the morning and got up and went, so we have to look at that too, right, Katie? And the next step is self-care. So for example, Joe found a 20-minute walk very refreshing while the home health aide was with Maria. So we really looked forward to having that time. I know a lot of caregivers look forward to having just a few moments to themselves, just to collect themselves. And you're going to have that time scheduled. So, the 20-minute walk was helpful for Joe. He attended an additional support group, found that helpful, and was more calm with Maria after his walk, which helped him recharge. And I have a funny little vignette. It seems that whenever I do yoga, I'm apparently a much calmer parent, I've been told. So whenever things get really steamy or difficult, when there's challenges there with behaviors, I try to do some yoga, even if it's in my room or whatnot. So I think that people find their thing. What is it that can maybe give you a recharge, even
Right.
just 20 minutes?
I love what you're saying there, because when we think about this self-care, and one of the things that you identified, Amy, was that a critical element to the behavioral approach is how you approach your person and how you respond. So a lot of that then comes from your internal reserves. And if you have scheduled time for respite, if you'd scheduled time for self-care or something you enjoy, even if it's small, it doesn't have to be a weekend away. It can be, I know on Wednesday mornings that I'm going to walk out the door and know my loved one's safe, and I have time for a walk or to go get a coffee or just do something in peace that I enjoy. And I think that that is a really critical element. Well, um, thank you for walking through that DICE model with us today, Amy. It was I think we tried to present it in a simplified way, but we want people to know that you can use DICE in many different scenarios. And also, it is a comprehensive training program. And there are two specific resources that we want to identify for all caregivers to access. So the first is that Dr. Kales and colleagues have released an online DICE training model that anyone can access. It has an annual fee of $70 a year, and you can register for it online and watch the modules at a time that's convenient for you. I think that's really critical for caregivers, that it's broken up in different modules and that they can watch it maybe late at night as their free time.
Right, exactly. It's nice that it's online too, and you can save it and go back to it. Once you have the subscription or whatnot, it's yours, so you can even show it to someone else, or, it's not a one-time training that you're physically going to, so you could do it in your own time, which I enjoyed when I took the training.
I really like what you just said there, because imagine if you hire someone to help you in your home and be part of your loved one's care team, you can ask them, would they also be willing to participate in this training, so that you're speaking the same language as you're developing a shared care plan. The second piece is that there is a DICE manual, and it's really easy to read, has like great tips and tricks, and really explains like the foundation of DICE. And this can be found on Amazon, and for a very reasonable price as well. So these are not tools that are required. You don't need to purchase them to use this behavioral approach, but if you feel that it might help you. So just show the next slide. So take a picture of this slide, send us an email if we can help to connect you with these resources, because we want caregivers and family members to feel empowered that when a new symptom or a challenging moment pops up, you're not helpless. You can reach into your toolkit and say, okay, we're going to take this step by step and we're going to work on it together and really try to come from that strength-based detective approach to just be that expert in your loved one's condition.
I really like that the manual goes into great depth, right? So we did a very simple version, and because in the interest of time, we didn't go through every possibility, but in the manual, there's so many examples of very common things that you would see here and there, and it really gets you thinking and it breaks it down, and I think it's very helpful. So.
I do as well. And I think that having you as my partner today, Amy, has been wonderful. And we really appreciate all that you're doing to support our caregiver community, and just want to thank you for joining our team during this unprecedented time.
Thank you. And thank you to all the caregivers, to all of what you're doing every day. I don't think they get enough credit for waking up and taking care of your loved ones, going to work after that, or even if you're not working, there's so much to do around the home, the cooking, the cleaning, taking the doctor's appointments. We see you and we want to support you in any way we can. And I think this is a great way to help with some of that.
Yes. And so this has been a wonderful session, and I thank you for your time and for everyone's attention. And I look forward to our next Community Forum Friday. Be well, everyone.
Thank you.